takes place around anchoring events. These are events that we return back to on a regular basis over the course of a unit. And when I say a unit, I mean between 2 and 4 weeks of instruction. If it's shorter than 2 weeks, kids really can't get an in-depth understanding of complex ideas. If it's longer than 3 or 4 weeks, you're probably teaching so many big science ideas, you need to split it up. So an anchoring event is a puzzling event or process whose full explanation requires a wide range of science ideas to be coordinated with one another and to be coordinated with evidence. So we've used, I've showed you a bunch there in the video, but we've used things like roller coaster rides. In Washington State, we have Puget Sound, and we have a killer whale population that is declining. And I'll tell you, that is a complex biological problem. Scientists do not know why the killer whale population is declining. Some of our kids have, when we teach a unit on this, some kids think it's the buildup of biotoxins at the top end of the food chain. Other kids think that it's not the whole population that's declining. There's something that's affecting females more than males. So there's all kinds of theorizing by kids, which is fabulous, and why we do complex problems like this. The tanker there, also in the state of Washington on the far right, there was a case of a young boy who died in the surf off the cold, really super cold part of Washington. He died. This is an actual picture taken from the newspaper. A rescuer came in, pulled him out of the water. Half an hour later, he was resuscitated. He was officially dead. So this was in a unit on homeostasis and how the body maintains its internal workings in spite of drastic changes in the environment. Again, this is controversial, right? The teacher had to prep his students for what they were going to see. But his kids so appreciated and they were so involved in this unit. Again, just a side message, don't shy away from controversial events if they're in good taste. So back to the anchoring event of the wolves in Yellowstone. What happened after the wolves were reintroduced to Yellowstone? I have to say, here's another case where our sophomores in a biology class came up with better questions than the teacher had. Because the kids came up with this version of the question: how was it that so few wolves caused so much of a change in Yellowstone? Because they only introduced in Yellowstone 1 or 2 packs of wolves. How is it that 12 wolves caused huge changes? So here's the changes I'm talking about. When they first introduced wolves, right before they introduced wolves, these were the primary species in Yellowstone. In 1995, or shortly thereafter, they introduced just 2 packs of wolves. This is after they have introduced an apex predator into the system, something that eats everything else in the system, every other mammal anyway. And now the system is more diverse, not more sparse. It has more mammals, it has more birds, more fish, more insects, and more plants, and the rivers are actually a different shape. Look it up. It's How the Wolves Changed Yellowstone. There's a great video on it. Super complex problem. What's the science behind all this? Where do kids actually learn about science concepts? So here are examples of science concepts that you have to weave together in order to understand the learning situation. You have to help kids understand population dynamics. They're not going to invent that. Don't get me wrong. Modeling is not about kids just discovering stuff totally on their own. You as a teacher have to introduce the idea of population dynamics. You have to introduce the idea of trophic levels and energy. You have to introduce carrying capacity, interdependence of organisms, niches, competition for resources. All of those things have to be introduced by you, but the kids reason about those, and all of those become resources for their thinking about how did so few wolves cause such major changes in Yellowstone. All those ideas have to work together, not one by one by one. When we think about an anchoring event, we have got like a checklist of 4 things that we think about. So this summer we were thinking about teaching about cell division. And again, we rely on cancer as a good way to teach about cell division because it gets into how genes cause cells to replicate and how that process can go wrong. When something goes wrong, usually that makes a better anchoring event. Something does not go the way you planned. So we thought that we would try this anchoring event. This is just a young girl. It's not super dramatic, but it is a girl who's in her mid-20s as a middle schooler and a high schooler, she spent a lot of time in tanning booths. A lot of exposure to ultraviolet rays. She finds this little dot on her nose. This hits pretty close to me because I had exactly that surgery just a few years ago. So the question is, how did I, the girl, get skin cancer from too much sun? How does that happen? And will this kind of cancer spread? She has heard about it a lot of times. Why will this spread or not spread? So our checkoff list is this a phenomenon? Is it something that happens over time? The answer, yes. It happens over a great deal of time. It's not like the tanker implosion happens in like 2 seconds. Cancer happens over, I don't know. I think the origins of her cancer probably are a year previous to when you actually see it. But it is something that happens over time. Is it a contextualized situation, meaning that it happens, it's not generic, it happens to a particular person at a particular time under unique circumstances? Yes, it is. This is a real person. It's not fictitious. It's not a cartoon drawing of a person. There are a lot of details about how she recognized the cancer, how many days she spent in the tanning salon, and what kind of treatment she's undergoing. All of those things cause the kids to think more and more deeply than they would if this was just an abstraction of a person. The third checkpoint is, does it require a lot of core science ideas to be integrated with one another? We think so. Cell division, meiosis, mitosis, the genetic code, the protein replication, I won't go on, but it does require a lot of science ideas. And can students pull together core ideas in different ways? Can they show different models? Or are they all going to reproduce exactly the same model? If kids are producing exactly the same thing, that tells us maybe they're posterizing or just copying stuff off the web, and this is not a good anchoring event. It's not complex enough. So let me show you a representation of the art of a unit. So this is a 3-week unit, and this is on the tanker. So how do we deal with models over the course of a unit? So on the first day of class, this is on the far left here, this blue circle, we show the kids the video. And then we ask them to draw their initial models. And that's, I'll show you the initial model here. So they're drawing the initial model. Then we take a look at the initial models. We try to see, what do our students see? Should we adapt any of our upcoming lessons based on what we see? So moving forward, the next lesson might be jigsaw readings on molecular motion. We introduced that idea. Can crushing is a model. You can take a pop can and invert it in cool water after the water's boiled, and it will implode just like the tanker car. So they designed their own investigation there. Then we reach the middle of the unit. In the middle of the unit, we have kids revise their models. And we have them do it in a particular way, which I'll share in just a moment. But that happens in the middle. So they have initial models, and then they put these sticky notes on to revise them based on what they found out already. Then we continue through the unit. There's a marshmallow and a syringe activity. Computer simulations we use. We introduce mathematics, and we have them use mathematics. It's more than just at the end. They use mathematics throughout. And then they draw their final models. So this is the art. It's got 3 punctuation points. We've got initial models at the beginning. We revise those models right in the middle. And we have final models at the end. Let me warn you, you should not go back to your models like every single day. Do not mention that anchoring event every day. Your kids will get model fatigue. They'll say, oh my God, you're talking about that tanker again, right? So we only really talk about the tanker toward the middle of the unit when they're revising, and then a little bit more at the end. Don't revisit your anchoring event too many times. So there are plenty of places here where you can engage in scientific practices with students, like asking questions, playing, carrying out investigations, analyzing, interpreting data. All kinds of opportunities throughout there to do those other scientific practices.